I was a PK, and I decided to take a New Testament course at the University of North Florida. And I was thinking it'd be like Sunday school. My parents taught me the Bible, easy A. Just wanted to go a little bit deeper in my faith, so I decided to take this New Testament course. But it was at a regular university, so our textbook was Bart Ehrman. And if anybody knows who Bart Ehrman is, he's a professor at UNC Chapel Hill who's very anti Christianity and orthodoxy on any level. And so really struggled with that. That was the first time I encountered textual criticism and really wrestled with that. And my dad introduced me to Ravi Zachariah, and that helped me navigate through that space. And he introduced me to his work. He didn't actually know him, but so he introduced me to his work, and I fell in love with apologetics through that. But I realized there was a gap where many of the apologists, with the exception of Ravi's Indian, but most are older white men. And so I felt like a lot of the content wasn't relevant to the African-American context and experience. So I wanted to bridge that gap, and that's kind of where the genesis of Jude 3. Had it not been for apologetics, I probably would have walked away from my faith. And so, apologetics for me was a lifesaver. And so that's why it's so vital to me and my identity. I think apologetics and evangelism work in tandem. The end goal of apologetics is to evangelize. You want to get them to understand the person of Jesus Christ. And so it's not just a endless intake of information. It's information with the goal of leading someone to a relationship with Jesus and strengthening their relationship with Jesus if they're already a believer. And when I went to seminary, I was in a Christian bubble. I mean, not seminary. When I was in undergrad, I was in a Christian bubble. And so I was really thrown off when I was exposed to Bart Ehrman. And I felt like I had been blindsided by the information, and it sent me into a faith crisis. So what would have happened if I had been exposed to that in high school, in my senior year, my junior year, and been able to process that with somebody who thought differently, not processing it with my professor that is on the same page as Bart Ehrman? It just prepares you a little bit more for what you're going to face in the real world. For me, some of our apologetic material can be a bit dated because oftentimes we're answering questions people aren't even asking in our books, because sometimes people are writing books from an ivory tower, not intimate relationships with people. So a lot of my preparation for the apologetic ministry that I do comes from me building relationships with people who think differently, and me having interaction and seeing how can we flesh out your thoughts and what your objections are. And then if there are not resources for those, how can we create resources? I'm of the mindset that debates aren't as helpful as conversations. So what we've developed at Jude 3 Project is this concept called Courageous Conversations, where we pair scholars that have been trained in more conservative evangelical divinity schools and scholars that have been trained in progressive seminaries and divinity schools for a conversation about a topic that we know they don't agree on. But what we do is make sure that we tell them beforehand that this is going to be respectful, this is going to be civil, and this is not going to be a debate. We're going to talk about the issues, but we're going to not degrade the person for their perspective. And so I find that that's more helpful to people. People's minds are changed, questions are asked and posed, and people don't go into it thinking they have to win. And I think that's the downside to debate. When people go into debate, they automatically think about winning the argument. And apologetics at the core is not about winning arguments, it's about winning people. And so that's why I feel like conversations are a better use of our time than debates. We live in a society that's becoming more and more divided. We even in algorithms, they'll tell you that algorithms feed you your perspective. So you're getting more and more of what you believe on your timeline versus an opposing view. And so people are just in these echo chambers where they're only talking to themselves essentially, or talking to people like them. And I feel like if anybody should be leading courageous conversations, it should be the church. In a divided world, we should be demonstrating peacemaking. We should be demonstrating bridge building. We should be demonstrating bringing people together. We should be reconcilers, because that's what Jesus demonstrated for us. And so I think as in the ministry of reconciliation that we have, it is time for believers to seek out those who are apart and try to find ways to bring them together. And I think those relationships help us to sharpen one another and to see what people really believe instead of just speculating what one believes. So Jude 3 is a very shallow reason. There was 2 verses when I was like, we need an apologetics ministry. 1 Peter 3:15, Jude 1 and 3. And so I was thinking creatively and graphically. And I was like, contend can be, I can use like a boxing ring. And I had like all these ideas about how I was going to design the website. So really, I just picked it just because of that. It wasn't a spiritual reason. People think I'm joking. I'm like, no, literally, it was a creative reason. And at the end of when we got done designing the site, I didn't even use the original design. So I guess it was just providence working through my ignorance. I don't know.